Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Mr. Speaker, this serious data incident should never have happened. It may have occurred 3 years ago under the previous government, but to all those whose information was compromised, I offer a sincere apology today on behalf of the British government.
So an apology from the Defence Secretary John Healey after it was revealed a data leak had compromised the safety of thousands of Afghans who worked with the British government. It's been kept secret for 3 years via a superinjunction. The revelation has sent shockwaves across Westminster. Hello, you're listening to Bloomberg UK Politics. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Yuan. The dramatic revelation of a massive and expensive data breach this week has blindsided Westminster. It's the first time that a superinjunction which stops the media reporting a story has been used to protect the government from press coverage. The government says that it was to allow them time to fly affected Afghans out of the country and to protect their safety. But it's raised questions over the scheme's enormous cost and the political timing, given that this happened under the previous administration and wasn't reported on until after the election.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Labour MP, Lloyd Hatton MP for South Dorset. He sits also on the Parliamentary Committee, the Public Accounts Committee, and he says that the scrutiny from his fellow MPs is only just beginning.
When this scandal, this breach, first materialised under the previous government, I think there was probably some real big mistakes made, particularly around sound use of taxpayers' money. I think the ministers at the time in that previous government have some serious questions to answer, and I imagine those ministers and other officials, civil servants, and all the rest of it will come before committees to answer questions and to rightly be held to account.
So that was the Labour MP Lloyd Hatton. Some of those former ministers have been out speaking to the media, defending the wide-ranging superinjunction and why it was put into place. But all of this puts troubling issues for Labour back on the agenda. How well is it coping with high levels of migration, for one, and is the machinery of government functioning as it should?
Well, on the show today, Sean Humber, partner at law firm Leigh. Sean is a human rights lawyer and privacy breach compensation claims specialist. Sean, in your experience of data breaches, just give us a sense of the scale of this one.
No, this really was a catastrophic data breach. I think because of two reasons, really, that combine. First of all, because of the sensitivity of the information. And the sensitivity in this case was that it had identified those named on it as having helped the UK forces previously and then were at risk from the Taliban following September 2021. So that's the first thing. So it's the combination of sensitivity of the information. And the second thing is the numbers affected. There's over 18,000 people affected by the data breach. So it's if you put those two together, I'd say this really is a very serious data breach.
There were also details of more than 100 Britons, including those working as spies and in the special forces, that were part of that massive data breach. Although I think it's worth understanding that more than 18,000 people who had applied for the Afghan relocations and assistance policy programme, the scheme which was called Arab, it was in the process of being worked on to assess whether those people were going to be eligible for relocation or help by the UK government. So that was what was being worked on at the time. Your firm is now investigating a group claim for compensation in this case. So tell us about the process at the moment and what you're thinking about now.
Yes, I think looking at the kind of legal issues, we think it's a strong claim because I think, as the government has admitted, this was a serious data breach. They accept that the breach was unacceptable, and in fairness, they've issued an apology. So the law is very clear that organisations, our organisation, your organisation, but the government as well, have an obligation to take steps to keep sensitive information safe. And they didn't here. And I think that the point was, yes, it was a mistake and no one did it deliberately, but you need to have policies and procedures in place that stop that. We all have bad days, but you need to have systems in place to stop something as bad as this happening. And they didn't. So I think it's pretty clear that they breached the law. on this. There's a breach of the UK General GDPR, the Data Protection Act, and it's also, in legal terms, there's something called a misuse of private information. So I think it's pretty clear that legally the claim is strong, that the government didn't take the action needed to keep the information safe. And as a result of that, people are able, who've been affected by it, are able to make a claim for the fact that there's been a loss of control over their sensitive personal information, and then the distress that's been caused by that.
I'm interested in the money we're talking about in this case. Clearly, this is turning out to be incredibly expensive for the government. I don't think we quite yet know all the details of that because this is so fresh, but it's running into the billions, and it's likely with this case they're going to be on the hook for even more money. How much do you think these people are likely to get, and how much could the bill end up costing the taxpayer?
I think it's difficult to generalise because one would need to look on a case-by-case basis of the effect of the disclosure. Clearly, the disclosure itself is common to everyone, but the effect of that disclosure is different. So, for instance, it's likely that somebody who remains in Afghanistan and has suddenly found out for the first time on Tuesday that their personal data had been disclosed, they probably have a greater claim than somebody that's now in the UK. So I think it's important to say that compensation claims for data breach cases have been relatively modest. It's difficult to look at some and things analogous to this, but it's usually in the thousands. But again, I think it's important to say we'll need to look on a case-by-case basis about what the effect of that disclosure has been on them.
Okay. I mean, worth putting a couple of points. For example, that the Taliban government in Afghanistan says that it has not and has denied monitoring citizens or using it for reprisals within Afghanistan after the revelation of this data leak, at least according to local reporting. And also when it comes to the person actually who released the email in error, this data leak and how it happened, apparently, again, according to reporting in the UK, they were moved to a new role. They weren't sacked. In terms of the process, then, if you say that it's going to be a case-by-case basis, I mean, that is going to be an enormous amount of work if that is truly going to go through each individual case rather than a mass claim.
Sorry, I probably haven't been as clear as I could. It will be a group claim because people are affected in the same way, but within that group claim, there will be, we'll obviously identify the individuals who've been affected, and this process allows for the payment of different amounts of compensation according to how people have been affected, and so one will be able to take instructions and details from each of the people about what they consider to be the effects of the disclosure on them. So, I mean, the group claims are relatively common in the UK, and they're done in a streamlined way where there will be some common features, but some individual features.
I'm interested, obviously, you think this is a winnable case, otherwise you wouldn't be taking it on. But the MOD say that they've taken appropriate action in line with the level of risk these individuals faced. And they say that any claims that they do get, we will fight them hard.
Well, I think it's probably not uncommon in litigation for people to say things like that, and in the end, some kind of settlements are usually reached, or the matter then goes to court, and it's for the judge to decide. I think the points that I probably need to stress is that legally, this seems to be a strong claim because the breach was unacceptable, and it seems to me that there's good evidence that people have suffered adverse consequences because of that. And, if you're still in Afghanistan, for example, there seems to be credible evidence from all sorts of media outlets and reports over the years and reports from NGOs that there is a problem if you're associated with having assisted the previous regime. There are still killings, there are still human rights abuses. And so the leak of this information does exacerbate their vulnerability, it seems to us. And there's good, credible evidence for that.
You say that you're also representing claimants who are still in Afghanistan. How difficult is that, given that backdrop, representing them and thinking about this case with people based either in the UK or in Afghanistan?
Yes. Obviously, those who remain in Afghanistan are particularly vulnerable, and we're acting for them in this case. But frankly, we've also acted for others in previous cases, which is another point to make. That this is just the latest, or albeit the most serious, of a long line of data breaches by the MOD of those Afghans that assisted them. So there seems to be a very cavalier attitude towards those people's confidential information. But yes, I mean there are difficulties in relation to communications with those, and in recent days we've obviously been in communication with a number that remain in Afghanistan. Frankly, are very, very worried.
I'm interested in the environment around these group legal actions. How has that changed over the years? Are there more of them these days?
Yes, I think it's fair to say that the legal profession in recent years has there have been more group claims in relation to a variety of different matters. But in a way, if you think about it, it's the way that one can bring these claims most economically. What you don't want is thousands and thousands of separate claims, brought in a range of different courts, presumably, that are essentially looking at the same matters. So what the courts have decided to do is that they're the ones that have set up a procedure for this, where you do bring these claims as groups, but within that, there are obviously issues that are specific to the individuals. So if they're group claims, but there is also an analysis of individual situations.
In terms of you talk about a pattern of behaviour by the MOD, that it effectively goes to the kind of machinery of government, the cavalier attitude that you mention. You clearly perceive a significant problem with adhering to the GDPR rules. Is that still the case under this Labour government?
To be fair, I don't have any kind of information in terms of very recent situation, but I think just to give an example, we're acting for other Afghans who are affected by a serious data breach occurred in September 2021, where their names were put in kind of a group email, but not as kind of blind copy, but just so everyone could see everyone else's names. And so that was a serious breach, and there were fines, by the Information Commissioner's Office, the regulator, for that. Now, what happened after September 2021 is the Defence Secretary came to the House, made a statement, probably not that dissimilar from the statement made earlier this week, but then said, look, we've now got our house in order. We've changed our policies, we've changed our practices. Something like this can't happen again. And then, lo and behold, you now have the announcements earlier this week where there was this serious data breach that occurred 6 months afterwards. Yeah, so I think the problem is that it is very difficult to know. The Ministry of Defence always keeps saying it's learnt the lessons, but these problems still keep on occurring.
Sean, really good to get your thoughts on that. Sean Humber, previously breach compensation specialist at law firm Leigh. Clearly, a really chaotic state of affairs at the Ministry of Defence, a really, really big mess up, which has not only put a lot of people's lives at risk, but cost a huge amount of money. Well,
listen, former ministers Grant Shapps and Ben Wallace, who initially applied for the superinjunction and then the kind of the follow-up wider ranging superinjunction, have both defended their moves here, that there was no apology for applying for the initial injunction. The government has, defended the actions that they've taken to try to sort of mitigate the dangers to the Afghan individuals who were named. So look, I think we're going to have to see what the government does about this in terms of how much the projected cost is of this relocation programme at the moment, £850 million. Let's see where the court cases end up.
Yeah, and the first ever use by the government of a superinjunction, which of course is very significant in itself. Well, that's it from us for today. If you like the programme, don't forget to subscribe and give it 5 stars so that other people can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or wherever you listen.
This episode was produced by Harry Black. Our audio engineer was Andrew Gavin. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Yuan. We'll be back with more next Friday. This is Bloomberg.